Darkness enveloped me as I trudged through the stormy night, the rain an icy onslaught against my skin. Cursing myself for not having an umbrella or car, I clutched my soggy work papers close to my chest in a futile attempt to protect them from the elements. Just a few more blocks, I told myself through chattering teeth. Soon I'd be out of this miserable deluge and safe at home. That's when I noticed the eyes, two glowing orbs of yellow piercing through the shadows. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. It was the black cat again, the same one I'd seen lurking around my office all day, always watching me with an unnerving intensity. Now, I'm not a superstitious person by any means, never have been even as a kid, but something about that cat following me all day, combined with the eerie timing of its appearance again now, set my nerves on edge. Maybe it was just the foul weather and exhaustion from a long day clouding my mind. Animals had never been fond of me, especially felines. There was no rational reason for this particular cat to be stalking me. A blinding flash of lightning made me jump, and the cat vanished into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. Shaking off my unease, I pressed onward, my shoes squishing with each step, just a little farther to the warmth and safety of home. But apparently fate or that creepy cat had other plans. I'd barely made it half a block before those haunting yellow eyes emerged from the gloom once more, stopping me dead in my tracks. The cat stood like a furry sentinel in the middle of the sidewalk, rain dripping from its ink-black coat, though I couldn't make out the details of its face through the heavy downpour. When our gazes locked, those eyes seemed to hold all the mysteries and menace of the universe. Swallowing hard, I willed my frozen legs to move, to carry me past the unsettling creature and the irrational dread its presence evoked. I didn't have time for silly superstitions or staring contests with strays. But in my haste, I failed to notice the cat dart under my feet until it was too late. With a startled yelp, I tripped over the furry fiend and face planted on the sidewalk, scattering my papers everywhere. The cat yowled as if I were the one at fault and raked my side with its claws before streaking off toward a storm drain. Cursing up a storm myself, I peeled my bruised body off the concrete and assessed the damage. My papers were ruined, the ink bleeding into puddles. To add insult to injury, when I tried to gather them up, they just fell apart in my hands. As if this night couldn't get any worse. Dripping wet, aching all over, my work destroyed. Talk about a string of bad luck. And I couldn't shake the uncanny chill slithering down my spine at the thought of that devilish feline crossing my path so many times today. It was almost like, "No, that's crazy," I muttered, pushing aside the silly notion brewing in my head. Clearly the cold was addling my brain. Superstitious nonsense, that's all it was. Spotting the front steps of my home through the misty gloom, I had just bought the quaint Victorian a few weeks ago. I forced my stiff legs into a jog. The old house was small but more than enough space for a bachelor like me. I didn't own much anyway, and rarely had company over. Suited me just fine. After fumbling for my keys with numb fingers, I stumbled inside and kicked the door shut behind me as if to block out all the strangeness of the evening. Tossing my sopping jacket aside, I stripped off my ruined work clothes right there in the entryway, not even bothering to relocate to the bedroom first. Exhaustion settled over me like a leaden shroud. I practically had to wade through the sea of half-unpacked boxes still crowding the house to reach my room. With no energy left to dig out proper pajamas, I just threw on some sweats and an old t-shirt before collapsing into bed. Maybe everything would make more sense in the clear light of morning. Within minutes of my head hitting the pillow, I succumbed to the pull of sleep. Bam! I jolted awake some interminable time later to the unmistakable sound of something solid hitting the floor. Then came the crash of breaking glass. Groggy and disoriented, my heart pounding, I sat up and strained my ears for any other disturbances. But only silence greeted me, rising as quietly as possible so as not to make the bed springs creak. I crept over to the dresser where I thought I'd stashed a flashlight the other day while unpacking. My groping fingers found the handle and knocked the light to the floor with a graceless clunk. I froze, cursing my clumsiness, and waited to see if the noise drew any unwanted attention from, well, whatever had caused that earlier ruckus. 1 minute passed, then another, with no further sounds except the hammering of my own heart. Breathing a little easier, I stooped down to retrieve the flashlight. Steeling my nerves, I inched open the bedroom door and shone the wavering beam into the dark hallway. Nothing seemed amiss at first glance. I checked behind me to grab a weapon of some sort, but unless I planned to bludgeon an intruder with a box of clothes, I was out of luck. Brandishing the flashlight before me like a sword, I slunk down the hall on high alert, goosebumps prickling my clammy skin. Each step sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive silence. That unnerving sense of being watched slithered over me again, raising the hairs on the back of my neck, but I tamped it down. Just your imagination, I scolded myself. Too many late nights and scary movies. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, a strangled gasp escaped my throat. Shards of dinnerware lay strewn all over the linoleum, glittering in the flashlight's glow. A large packing box that had held my new set of dishes teetered on its side nearby, spilling packing peanuts everywhere. No way that thing could have tipped over on its own. I'd barely been able to lift it earlier. Then I saw them, muddy paw prints trailing through the chaos, far too big to belong to a cat. A soft mew sounded right behind me, and I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the flashlight. The beam danced wildly across the dark hall, but no glowing eyes looked back at me. My heart clawed its way into my throat as primal terror choked me. There was no logical explanation for how a cat could have gotten into my locked house or had the strength to overturn a box that heavy. Another plaintive meow came from the living room, and I whirled toward it, hugging the flashlight with trembling hands. I just passed through there and knew it was empty, or had been, but I had to be sure or I'd never get any peace. I retraced my steps, scanning every shadowy corner and crevice between the moving boxes. No sign of the cat. Maybe I was just hearing things. Exhaustion and stress could play tricks on the mind. That theory flew out the window when a stack of boxes I was positive I hadn't left in the middle of the room caught my eye. There, perched imperiously atop the highest one, sat the devil cat. Its piercing yellow eyes looked almost triumphant as they bored into mine. I opened my mouth to scream, but it transformed into a strangled whimper as icy fingers brushed the nape of my neck. The flashlight tumbled from my numb grip, plunging the room into darkness. Utter, frigid terror locked my muscles as those awful fingers slid up into my hair, sharp nails scraping my scalp. "Shoo!" A voice hissed in my ear, the sibilant whisper a hideous amalgamation of 100 tortured souls. Teeth chattered and clacked mere inches from my face, the stench of rot and decay washing over me. I gagged, hot tears blurring my vision. "Move, damn it!" I screamed at myself. "Don't just stand here waiting to die." But my petrified limbs refused to cooperate, leaving me as helpless as a fly in a spider's web. Skeletal fingers danced down my tear-streaked cheek in a mockery of a caress that made my skin crawl. The heinous chattering sounded like it came from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Fight or flight finally kicked in, and I wrenched myself free of the spectral grasp with a burst of panic strength. I lunged for the front door, vaulting over boxes, no longer caring about the flashlight or being able to see. I just needed out of this nightmarish house now. Demented laughter swelled around me as I fumbled with the locks, the hideous sound so starkly at odds with the appearance of the grotesque figure materializing from the shadows. At first glance, she could have passed for an ordinary young woman with long black hair and a lovely face, until she stretched her bone-white arms toward me, crimson lips curling back to reveal jagged fangs. The black cat leaped into her embrace, hissing, screaming. I flung myself out the door and into the raging storm. The rain lashed my skin as I fled blindly, the wind tearing at my clothes and hair. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the dark street in staccato bursts. Too late, I saw the headlights barreling down on me, the shriek of tires and blaring horns swallowed by a deafening clap of thunder. Searing pain exploded through my body on impact, and suddenly I was airborne. I hit the ground hard, the breath whooshing from my lungs. The world spun sickeningly and I tasted copper on my tongue. Weakly, I lifted a hand to the back of my skull, my fingers coming away sticky and warm. The edges of my vision darkened and narrowed. As I lay there bleeding, frantically trying to cling to consciousness, A small, furry shape padded over to me. Through the black spots dancing before my eyes, I could just make out the cat climbing onto my chest, its impossible weight crushing my struggled breaths. Glowing yellow eyes, now tinged with vindictive satisfaction, were the last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me.